Hey everyone, and welcome to this product demo video. My name is Patrick Gray. I am the host of the Risky Business Podcast. And yeah, we do these YouTube product demos for vendors, for our sponsors, so that they can show you what it is that they're actually selling. And joining us today is Eugenio Pace. He is the co-founder and chief executive of Auth0, which these days is a part of Okta. And he is going to be running us through the Auth0 platform and basically showing us what it's all about. Eugenio Pace, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Patrick, for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay, so why don't you start off, I guess, by telling us what it is that you're actually going to be showing us today?
So today I'm going to show you a quick walkthrough on the Auth0 platform, which is it's a service that we make available for developers to take care of all the authentication and authorization requirements on applications.
I mean, that is a pretty simple brief and very concise. We do appreciate that. So I'm going to bring up your screen here. Why don't you, I guess, kick off the demo. Show us what you're going to show us.
Sure. So what I want to use, it's a very simple application. It's a web application that I built. Super simple. This is a code. So if you're familiar with Node.js, what it does creates a server, which is a web server, and then I have like one route, which is the root of the site, and this is a handler for the request that I'm going to send and the response that I'm going to send back. And just for the sake of this demo, what I'm doing is I'm building an app that it will send you back a random number every time you hit the web. Okay, so let's fire that up. That's done. I'm going to go back to my website here. So now if I reload the page, you should be able to see that that's working. Every time I refresh the page, there's a new random number that is being generated.
This is Hello World with a twist.
Hello World with random numbers. So
okay.
Now this page clearly is not protected. So I'm going to the page, I'm refreshing, and I'm getting free random numbers. And obviously what I want to do now is to, as a developer, and build this application. I want to track who is using my system. The first thing I need to do is to add authentication to it. And so for that, I'm going to be using Auth0. And Auth0, as I said, it's a platform that gives you APIs to secure websites, secure mobile apps, to secure anything, devices, anything that requires the system to know who is interacting with it. So essentially answering those two questions: who are you and what can you do? And so you start by creating an account in Auth0. I already did that. This is my random zero account. And one of the first things I need to do is to register my application as one that it's going to be delegating authentication to it. So I already did that beforehand. This is my random zero app. Because we are a developer-oriented platform, we offer tutorials and quick starts in any language, any stack. So if you're a Microsoft developer or a .NET developer or a Java developer, whatever it is, we have the content and the explanations to get you going as quickly as possible. One of our goals is to remove the entire concern of security and specifically authentication and authorization from your mind, so you can focus on doing what you do best, which is your app. So
I mean, it wasn't really so long ago that people would actually have to construct their own auth, right? And
yes.
We know there be dragons.
Yeah, authentication that's a good point that you bring up, because authentication is somewhat deceiving. It looks like simple on the surface. I mean, if you think about it in its simplest form, which is a username and a password window with a button that says log me in, how hard could it be? It's two text boxes and one button.
Those are famous last words. But I mean, modern authentication doesn't look anything like that anymore. It's not just a username and a password to access some HTML resource. Like those days, they're long gone.
They are indeed. But even in that simplest form, which could be like, again, how hard could it be? Once you start peeling out the requirements, you start thinking about things, even the basic things. How do you store the password? Well, guess what? You shouldn't store passwords. You should store hashes of passwords. So then which hashing algorithm should you use? Because there's many, and some of them are not as secure as they used to be. There's been weaknesses discovered over time. So all of a sudden, something that looks very, very simple on the surface becomes a nightmare, which it's very risky, because if you make a small mistake, then you open up the doors for anybody to have access to your data, to your privacy, to whatever that is. And today, nowadays, we interact with technology for every aspect of our lives. And so, getting authentication right, it's pretty important.
All right, well, why don't you kick us on through this demo? Because, this demo isn't going to just be, oh, look, we added it and now there's a login box. I believe you're going to, sort of walk us through, a more extended use case of the platform. So, kick it on. Let's go.
Yeah. So I chose Node.js because that's the technology that I'm using for my demo. And I get a full tutorial explaining me what needs to be done, what's the configuration setting that I should be using, etc. One of the things that we do is we provide like code snippets that are ready to use, so you don't make any mistakes in copy pasting values from one place to another. So here you see like the few lines of code that I'm supposed to be adding into my app to wire up authentication in the app back to Auth0. So very conveniently, even the parameters of my app configured in Auth0 are already
that's
for me. And
that's so nice that you don't have to copy a sample config and then cut and paste all of your own stuff into it. It's just done.
Exactly, it's just done. So you copy, you go back to this is my app, so I'm gonna go here and paste this. So you see what I'm doing here is I'm bringing up a module that will take care of all the negotiation of configuration. And then I have like some parameters. Obviously, I want authentication to be required. And then all the parameters there are already ready for me. Now, my server is not called app, it's called a server. So I'm going to change this. So it's server. And then here, this statement is saying like, please all use authentication in my entire website. So in this case, I'm protecting the entire website, not specific routes. All the website is going to be protected. Now, I already did a little bit of, I'm going to cheat a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the code here. So do that. And then maybe do this. So I have everything. So first I'm generating the random number as before. Then I'm retrieving the user that's being logged in. And then I'm going to show in the screen not just the random number, but I'm going to show the email of the user that has just logged in. Last but not least, I have like a simple link so I can log out and restart the whole thing back from the beginning. So same as before, save all the changes. Now it's being deployed. So if I did everything right, and if I go back to my website and I refresh this, then it's not working. It's not working because this is...
You didn't sacrifice the correct number of goats for the demo.
There we go. Let's see if that works. Yeah, it works.
Hey, there we go. Yeah.
So let me log out because I was doing some preparation for this. So when you go to the website now, let's start again. Now you see a login screen because now, as I said before, we protected the entire website. And so we're saying, before you hit any resource on the website, you need to log in. And we're seeing the simplest form of login possible, which is username and a password. So I'm going to type, I have a test account here, logging in, go back. And if everything goes well, let's say, welcome, Eugenio Pace, mail.com, random number 53. If I refresh again, then I'm getting, because I'm already logged in and I didn't have to do anything.
So we've shown, you've built the world's simplest application and you can show us that you can very quickly add authentication to it without breaking it. So that's nice. I get it. This is a cool demo.
Yeah, let's go back and see what else we can do here, because that's great and nice, but it's not, doesn't look like really as my website. So if I go back here to log out, I'm logging out. If you notice on the URL, I'm on auth0.com, right? So this random 0 US auth0.com. So I'm definitely in a different place where login is happening, which is our authorization server, which is all fine. But my company is my company. Auth0 is a different company. So I want to be able to customize this to make it my own. So the very first thing that I would typically do is go on branding and go to login. And here's where you would go and change the look and feel of the login screen. So I probably go and change my colors. Let's use some blue and logo. I do have a logo here I can use that I found somewhere there. Here it is. So I have this. Let's see, this looks good. So now save changes. And of course, I'm a developer, but I'm not a designer. But if I go back to my site, log in again, hopefully, now this looks more like Random Zero and less as Auth0. So obviously, I'm a developer, not a designer. But we give you all the tools to take full control of how this will look like. And as a first step into making the login experience your own and not Auth0's. Make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, how do we? And I'm guessing you're going to walk us through this yourself. But how do we actually get that onto a company domain instead of being an auth0.com domain?
Custom domains is one of the first things you would take as a first step into taking this site to production. So that's one of the features that we offer. We automatically we allow you to register with Let's Encrypt, give you your own a certificate for your website. Or you can bring your own and just configure Auth0 in a way that it doesn't completely look like your own site. So it would be like randomzero.com or whatever that is.
Yeah. So do you do it as a subdomain? Like that'd be the easiest way to spin it up, like login dot or?
No, it would be any. I'm not going to do it here because it's all running in my machine. But here you would take full control of this path. So it would look like login dot randomzero.com if it was that example.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, cool.
So we used username and passwords. So that's built into Auth0. We already, every time you create an account, we provision a store where where usernames and password hashes will be configured. But one of the things, typical things that you would do is configure password strength. So that's already also built into the system. So if you wanted to enforce some kind of complexity in your password, we do that. We all the UI capabilities to show, whether you're compliant with that complexity or not, that's already built into the system. You don't need to do anything. The other thing that we do, which is pretty cool, is we have this password dictionary check. So you can go and check this box, and what we do is we will automatically check any passwords that users of your website will attempt to use when signing up, and it will make sure that it's not on this list. So if your password ends up being on this list, we will decline that operation, and we will automatically reject any password that we deem weak. These are the 10,000 top most common passwords that people use that shouldn't be using. And so, password, best practice here, always use a password manager if you're using username and passwords, right? So all of that is done with just a simple checkbox on your configuration string here. We also allow you to do a little bit more sophisticated checks. So if you want to prevent your personal names to be used, or fragments of that being used as part of the password, also checking here will enforce that as well. All of that, it's built into here without having to do anything on your app or having to customize anything further. All of that is just checkboxes and configuration settings on your website. But more,
and that's the thing too, because you think these features, I mean, they're simple ideas, but then you go to implement them yourself, and it's all of a sudden it's a project, not just a few quick changes, unfortunately.
That's exactly right. And all of that is distracting you from what you do best, which is your app. And so a lot of our competition or our value proposition is precisely that. This opportunity cost is the time that you spend developing all these things and connecting with these APIs or checking this list or implementing password complexities, and think about like all the adjacency complexities around it, like localization, the same dialog box that shows, oh, you're missing a symbol or whatnot. We ship all in, like every possible language. Well, no, maybe not every possible language, but a lot of the
Yes.
languages that you would expect are all included there. So localization is there. All of that is taken care for you, so you don't have to. But maybe even more interestingly, we also offer around this, this type of authentication. We offer these advanced protections, which are also built into the service. And so the first one I wanted to highlight is this brute force protection. So turning that thing on will prevent somebody from, checking or creating like scripts that will try to, just by brute force, trying to break into accounts with, just permutation of the password.
So it's interesting, right? Because like a lot of the companies that, the bigger web application based companies that do develop their own auth flows and whatnot, they've had to handle the issue of bots and brute forcing either through their CDNs or even through extra companies that just do bot throttling. But doing it actually in the auth platform makes so much more sense. I mean, you're not going to move to an auth platform necessarily if you are like a huge consumer-facing web application. I understand why they would want to roll their own. They're one of the few places where it's justified. But for enterprise, like it's a no-brainer.
Well, and even the first, big consumer brands, even in those cases, we have very large customers in those segments too. And yes, they might have the resources to staff and maybe implement all this themselves. But that's an ongoing concern, because as you well know, security is not something you do it once and you're done. You pretty much need an auth development team if you're going to do that, and there'll be some duplication. So I imagine for some of them, they do their spreadsheets, and on the other side of it, it makes sense for them to be a customer. But I guess my point was more that at least there's a defensible case for some of these large consumer-facing organizations to do it. But there's also a business case that they could use an auth platform. But I guess what I was getting at is if you're an enterprise, this doing brute force prevention by using an auth platform makes more sense than trying to do it with some sort of generic bot detection or whatever. Even though that stuff's useful, like it makes more sense specifically for brute forcing to do it in the auth platform. Exactly. No, exactly right. This is a perfect place where you can put all these controls and all these checks. So, you don't have to replicate this in every application too, because, often cases, companies have not just one app. They will have like a portfolio of applications. And so it makes sense to consolidate all that knowledge, all the protection, all the policies in one place, which is in this case would be us or us behind the scenes. And any application existing or in the future, you just wire up on all of that, takes, everything else is taken care of without having to recertify every new application that you bring online. More exciting, though, it's brute force protection. You could argue, well, I can probably find a module that does that. We also have like more interesting intelligence behind the scenes. So this one in particular is particularly interesting for me. It's a bot detection, credential stuffing attacks, and launching these distributed, like really, really sophisticated attacks on websites from all over the world. It's becoming more and more prevalent. Anywhere between 30 and 50% of all the traffic that we see in our platform globally, and we're talking about like billions of logins per month, in this case. But anywhere between 30 and 50% of the traffic, it's all these things. It's anomalous things. It's scripts running in hundreds of servers all over the world, attempting to reuse passwords or try, common passwords on dictionaries of usernames. So we are able to detect this, and we are able to essentially challenge, in this case, using CAPTCHA, one of the mechanisms that we use to challenge the user and prevent, just without any bot that it's trying to break into your system. And all of this, again, it's just by turning on a switch. And the last one, which is, I think it's perhaps even more interesting, is this ability to detect breach passwords, which is, I'm sure you're familiar with haveibeenpwned.com. And, this ability for us to check against well-known lists of username and passwords that are already out there in the wild. And so with turning this on, we are able to, when somebody signs up with a username and with a password, which might be complex still, but it's already has been breached, we are able to prevent that from happening. And we will prompt the user and say, you're trying to sign up into the site with a password that it's already known by hackers. So you better use a different one.
Yeah, I've seen some of the workflows on various people who use that Have I Been Pwned API, where it'll say you're trying to use a password that appears in a password breach, over at Have I Been Pwned, and it's just a good way to tidy up some of them.
Exactly. So this works essentially, we say conceptually the same. We use different sources. We just released a new version of this, which is this, as soon as possible with Credential Guard, which is a name that we're giving to the capability. We are using our own sources for breaches. We have a dedicated team in our company that looks for these breaches all the time, and we are able to detect these breach credentials almost instantaneously when they happen. And so by turning on this feature, you are the level of protection that we're able to give you, it's obviously much, much higher. Make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. I'm guessing you're going to bring in at some point, and the part that I'm really curious about is how you're going to do MFA.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a second. But one thing I also wanted to show is, especially for consumer-facing applications, social logins are also very common. And it's one way of not having another username and a password. Because, if you're able to log in with your, place your favorite social network here, and we give you like a whole list of those already pre-built, pre-wired, pre-configured for you to use. If you're building an application for developers, you can log in with GitHub, or Bitbucket, or whatever that is. All of those are available for you here, and just configure it in our system. I already have for my demo here, I turn on Twitter. So let's say, let's turn on Twitter for random 0. And now if I go back here, if it works, now I not only have username and password, now I also have Twitter enabled there as well. So it was as simple as turning on a switch. But you can think of, if you want login with Apple, login with Facebook, login with Google, all of that. Behind each of those integrations, there's a lot of configurations, and over time, these providers also change their APIs. So one of the things that we also take care of, it's the full maintenance of those integrations, so you don't have to worry if Apple changes their API or Facebook changes their endpoints. All of that, it's taken care of in one place, so you don't have to go back to your app and say, this URL is not working anymore. It's going to be deprecated in 3 months. You don't have to take care of any of that or track any of those changes at all.
It's interesting, right? Because those buttons, those login with Twitter, login with Facebook, login with Apple, I mean, those buttons are proliferating around the internet like you would not believe over the last couple of years. So, yeah.
Exactly. And now if, in addition to that, that's all great especially for consumer applications, maybe for anything that it's meant to be used by an individual. But another segment that we serve, it's people building applications for companies. And so when the company that it's buying your system, it's a company, it's an organization, it's not an individual. So that's where a lot of complexity comes in, because you're required, anybody selling software to an enterprise, they will have to go through security if you're flying over the radar, right? So you will get a conversation with the CISO, you get a conversation with the security team. They will ask you for compliance. They will certainly ask you to do single sign-on. And so login with Google and login with Facebook might be okay to do on your own. But when you have to integrate with anything that it's, with CA, with IBM, with Oracle systems, some of these systems have been around for a long, long time out there. And they're legacy, they're obscure, they're arcane, they're difficult to deal with. It's not self-service. There's not an SDK that you can download from GitHub. So we also give you that capability as well. So you can go here, configure what we call an enterprise connection, and we give you all the protocols are already pre-built in, so you don't have to do this yourself. Here's one example that I did with it's an Okta login. So it's a company using Okta as the identity provider, enterprise identity provider, trying to log into Random Zero using OpenID Connect. Implementing all of these yourself, it's doable because it's code. Developers sit down and just.
But I mean, we're definitely getting part of the the platform overview where it makes sense that Okta acquired Auth0, right? Because this is where the enterprise magic is.
Exactly. And so for us, it's as simple as adding Twitter. So once your system is connected so you configure your Auth0 account to trust a downstream enterprise Okta organization, then we will show up in the same way that we show Twitter here. So maybe
and this is magic for developers as well, because one of those things is if you want to be a real enterprise product, you need to have Okta support, and using Auth0 for your authentication layer and then just being able to connect it up this way. I mean, the number of people I know who just that turned into a real lot of work. Doing it other ways, I can see how this would be a very appealing way to get there quickly.
And I'm doing it here like in the simplest way possible. Of course, you can take full control of the experience. So here's where custom domains also come into play, because you can say, Acme as a company doing single sign-on with Random Zero, in this example. So you could do acme.randomzero.com. and that be automatically routed into Acme without even ever showing this login screen here at all, right? So if you click here,
it's just done, right? If you're off, it off you go.
There you go. So now I'm logging into Okta. I think I have a different set of credentials here for the demo, but if I did this properly and I log in. Now I should go back to the app. There you go. So I'm just logged into my app using my acme.com credentials, which are managed by an Okta account. Without
we've just gone from unauthed hello world that spits out random numbers to enterprise integration, which is it's pretty cool to be able to do that in a YouTube demo.
Yes, it is. And there's a whole bunch of other things here, but you mentioned MFA, and so MFA is one of the security features that we're also very excited to bring kind of to mainstream, because I'm very surprised that even in this day and age, MFA is not like just the default for everything. One of my pet peeve things whenever I sign up for any website, I go and I try to enable MFA, and I'm surprised by the number of systems that are still today don't make MFA like an option, clearly available option for securing access.
It's not just the consumer-facing stuff either. I think Microsoft actually just published some numbers the week that we're recording this that said that only 22% of Azure AD accounts actually have MFA enabled, right? So it's not where it should be, right?
It's mind-boggling. How could you possibly have 22%? That's really depressing, if you ask me. Well, depressing, but I'm also look, we're trying to change that. We're trying to make MFA super easy, accessible, and a great experience for end users too, because some of the reticence that we see in organizations to deploy MFA is the burden that it puts on the user, and the fact that doing MFA will turn users away of your system, which I understand. But there's ways you can do it that it's not really disruptive for the user experience. So back to our capabilities, for MFA, we offer a wide range of options, including some of the most advanced, like biometrics. Like if you're a Mac user, on a modern MacBook, you can use your fingerprint, you can use, your face, all of that. It's already
we're big fans of WebAuthn, and particularly now that there's OS level support with some of the Apple devices. Like when I saw that WebAuthn with FIDO device biometrics, that's cool. So when you enable that, they just Auth0 will just enroll the user with their own device on the next login. Is that kind of how it works?
And it will prompt, and if you have a computer that it's capable of that, it will just automatically prompt the user with whatever the OS capability that you have, and you will use that as a second factor. We're also working on having this as a first factor, which is also interesting in the whole passwordless, experience or passwordless world. So that's something I didn't show, but it's also supported in the platform. So if you want to do passwordless with simpler mechanisms, like I'm sure you've seen sites where you can log in with your email. It's essentially, you enter your email, you say login, you get an email with a link, you click on the link, and then you go back to the website as being logged in.
We are literally recording this demo on a platform, StreamYard, for which that is the login process.
And implementing that in Auth0, it's really, really simple. We take care of all the flows, like generating the one-time link and doing all the, sending the email, going back, all of that, it's already taken care for you.
It's amazing to me how not irritating that login flow is. It's the sort of thing that you expect to be annoying, but because you're not actually going through a whole password reset flow, it's fine. Yeah. It's just like, okay, that person controls that inbox, it's fine, let them in. It's good.
Exactly. And there's a whole category of applications where that experience is totally fine. And it's a completely acceptable experience. And I would argue even better than offering another password that people are, need to maintain or remember or whatever. It's fewer passwords. It's always better. So out of the box, we give you like a bunch of different options, including biometrics, including well-known multi-factor authentication systems like Duo Security if you are in the enterprise world. Email-based. We have our own application for that. One very popular one is this one-time passwords that use, like Google Authenticator or anyone that creates like this time-based one-time password. So,
and I'm guessing the enrollment's the same. It's just on next login, and you just prompt the user to, use their app to enroll themselves.
So let's see if it works. So I'm gonna turn these on, and then the second thing I'm gonna do is, when do you want that to happen? And it's, never. It could be used adaptive MFA, which is based on certain criteria, or, I can click on always and just always turn on multi-factor in this case. So let's see if I did it properly on my account. So now it's turned on for everything, and it's a one-time password. Hopefully now, let's see. So I go to the website, go back again. I'm going to use the same simple login here, login, and hopefully now we'll see the enrollment. So here's the enrollment for MFA. I'm going to use, this is Okta Verify. Okta Verify is Okta's multi-factor platform, and one of the things that it allows you to do is to do enrollments of systems like this. It's the underlying thing here is using it's a standard. So any application, you don't have to use Okta Verify. You can also use, there's Auth0 from Twilio. There's, there's Google Authenticator. There's, a bunch of others. So I'm using here this one. This allows you to enroll and scan a QR code. So I'm going to scan the QR code. I added the account. So now this is creating like random numbers, not random numbers, but the these
Yeah.
sequence numbers.
We know what you mean. That's fine.
So I type that in, and I did it properly. Now I'm in. So I'm in with my login layered with the multi-factor authentication, which is just enrolled, pretty much without having to do much. One thing I'm going to do here, let's see, I'm going to change this a little bit and maybe do, let me do this. So let's see. Let me do this one more time. Now continue. Now, because I'm already enrolled, there's no enrollment here. I just need to, and I put always, so I will do this, 851, and now I'm logged in again. But I wanted to show you behind the scenes that this is the payload that the application gets after the authentication. So you see that I'm showing just email on my app on the browser, but I get a whole bunch of other things too, which is the full user profile. So there's a nickname, my email. My email is not verified, so that's it's something, of course, in the real world, something that you would check has the email been verified. But I also get the information that this particular user has logged in and has successfully answered a multi-factor challenge. And you can imagine scenarios where you can use this information to drive the whatever the application is doing. So if I'm just browsing a catalog, I don't need MFA. But if I want to pay, or if I want to change my address or do something sensitive, you might want to check this property to make sure that the user has responded successfully to that challenge. And
I use a banking platform that it'll let you do things like check balances and whatever, and
Yes.
doesn't really bother asking you for MFA. But when you start wanting to move money around or whatever, it jumps at you.
Exactly. So that's how we make it. We give you the properties of the user so you can drive that behavior in your app. So you're not forcing MFA always like I'm doing here. You're only stepping up of the MFA to MFA when the action deserves that check. The last thing I wanted to show is from a security perspective, one thing that we also do, obviously we generate a whole bunch of information in the system, right? So if I go to our logs here, you can see, I logged in successfully, I answered my MFA, this is a second factor started, like there's a whole stream of logs that we generate with all the user activity and all the API activity of the full context of the transaction. And one thing that we do also out of the box is we can connect that stream of events to well-known systems that are security systems. So like Splunk or Sumo Logic or Datadog and other platforms where you can correlate information from our system with other information.
Well, I mean, it's you're showing us essentially a pointy, clicky seam integration, which is a lot easier than it tends to be for this sort of stuff.
Yes, and so like all of these things, are really our hope is that nobody needs to become a security expert from one day to another. They can just rely on the expertise that we built over time, over almost 10 years now, of doing this at scale and doing this, globally. We are a global company, and now that we're part of Okta, we're taking this to a next level. So hopefully this was a good walkthrough and a good overview of what we can do for you.
Well, Eugenio Pace, that actually was really interesting for me. I got to admit, much to my shame, I really actually enjoy hosting these product demos. It's always interesting to see what people have built. And, I've been covering InfoSec now for 20 plus years. And to see a demo where someone spins up a hello world and then all of a sudden it's, magic SSO in a couple of minutes. It's I understand that integrating a real world application is going to be a little bit more time consuming than that. But even the fact that you can do it in first principles so quickly and all of the plumbing works, it's pretty impressive. And I enjoyed that very much. So thank you very much, Eugenio Pace.
Thank you for having me.